Welcome back to Mark Holmes of Vlog, everyone, and thanks for joining in. Quick blurb, I've been chucking this idea around a little bit, and I don't know, see what you guys think. But is it true, in fact, what they all say? You know, it's so cliche to say a car is a reflection of who you are. It's a reflection of your personality. So do we drive the car based on that? Is a car, in fact, a mirror image of you and I? Is that what it is? I mean, that's a great conversation. And in fact, we look at some of the modern day cars, and I remember cars, for example, like the Corvette. You remember, you go back a few generations ago and you talk about the old C5s and C6s, and you typically find a lot of Corvettes back in the, even C4, C5 generations, and a lot of them were automatic by default. I would say probably 70% of the Corvettes back then were automatic. They weren't the greatest cars and effectively weren't really a high performance car. And I know they had a real reputation for, a convertible Corvette, say C4 C5 generation. And a lot of people would buy them. Middle-aged gentlemen, looking for, striking into that midlife crisis and looking for the next greatest thing to kind of sail off into the sunset. And I think when you looked at that older generation of Corvette, convertible, you kind of had this connotation, midlife crisis, and that seemed to be what it was. Things have clearly changed in the latest generation with the C8 Corvettes. They've changed a lot. They've gone, even the C7s, you think about those, they embody everything that is sort of Corvette, the classic front engine, rear drive, powerful, but they actually take it to a new generation now. Of course, in the C7s, they talk about having, all of a sudden we're talking incorporating dry sump engines. So in other words, they're better for the racetrack. You can get a manual or an auto, of course, but a very fast shifting automatic transmission. But also now the C8 is just an absolutely amazing beast. Clearly meant to be more for the racetrack than it is for posers. Now, granted, you see a lot of people just like cruising the boulevard in the new C8s because they like to be seen. They're a great looking car, and a lot of people think, well, what else is better? It's one of the most popular cars out there. So clearly the new C8 does attract that type of buyer who now maybe likes to spend more time than rather just cruising, maybe actually, hitting the racetrack, cruising the boulevard, or maybe even, doing the odd autocross. And clearly with dry sump engines, high revving engines, the looks and the styles of a Ferrari, a lot of people now buying the C8s are clearly doing so on a different thought process than maybe they did back in, 3 generations earlier. And then along comes the C6 Corvette. I truly believe was one of the best designs for the Corvette, in my opinion. The proportions were a little bit nicer. I thought the front end was a little shortened, and the overall look of the car was clean, very, very clean. And I do think that the the design theme and the value that a lot of buyers, or the value proposition, came one which was a little more sporty, and a lot of people saw that. I mean, you could get a naturally aspirated V8 engine and manual gearbox. I love that car, and so I believe it was maybe a slightly younger buyer looking at the C6. And then of course comes the C7. I love the C7 because now all of a sudden you get the Z06 and the ZR1s, and you have the supercharged V8s, and they were an absolute beast. And I've driven those cars, and spectacular. Of course, they also had dry sump engines, so they were clearly designed more for a racing environment. Also had more of the swooping lines, and so they were sort of harkening back a little bit more to the 70s Corvettes, or late 70s Corvettes. But I think it did bring in a new group of clientele to the brand, I personally think, and a younger buyer possibly. And while you can get a manual gearbox, and there's also the more mature buyer typically buying Corvettes, I do believe you're finding a lot younger buyers moving into the C7s. And along come the C8s, and now I think it's just slammed the door. It didn't kick the door open. It absolutely blew the door off the hinges, with the idea that now the new C8 is bringing in a whole new, clientele. And I think it's a younger buyers that, value, a little further innovation, people that are looking at something that only, Corvettes, or not Corvettes, or McLarens and Ferraris were delivering a few short years ago. Mid-engine supercar looks, performance, high revving capabilities, just a great design. So I think it does speak to the type of buyer. The C8 Corvette now is a newer buyer, younger buyer, somebody that's valuing performance rather than just style and cruising. They're looking at something that is actually track capable. So that is definitely a younger buyer. You think about even the Jags, the F-Types. What type of buyer are you getting with the F-Types? I think The F-Types, clearly, you're going to find people like myself probably on the back end of their, typically in the back end of their working careers, finally starting to reach out and gaining that appreciation for the brand. I mean, Jaguar has a long-rooted history in, motorsports, clearly design and theme and quality and standards and style, and it's absolutely gorgeous. But I think it does attract somebody who appreciates the finer things, somebody that, clearly does recognize some of those attributes that you don't typically find in some of the hot rod little modern day, cars that you find that are more popular by the youthful group. For example, you talk about GTRs, go the other way, a Nissan GTR, or, I was driving by the other day, Infinitis, G35s, G37s, for example, cars like that, are clearly 9 times out of 10 driven by a younger buyer, and that's great. It's just everything has a little bit different appeal. So I think those are a reflection of the buyers. I really, really do. You think of other cars, for example, a Porsche 911. The Porsche 911, there's a couple of trains there, because there's the fire-breathing GT3 RSs and GT2 RSs, and those are people that are typically well-heeled because they're not cheap cars. So often you're finding those are purchased by people that, professionals, lawyers, doctors, people that have the extra cash floating around, but are also, appreciate the, the performance attributes, because the racy versions are track ready. Versus you get into something that is more like a Carrera S Cabriolet that comes with an automatic. Obviously that buyer's looking more for, they love the name, they love the brand, they love the style. Maybe they got a few extra dollars. They're professionals in their workplace, but they clearly want something that is branded, but maybe not looking for that fire breathing capability. So typically they're not like, on the edge of their heels and ready to, fire it up. So yeah, I do believe it's really, really about your personality and a reflection of that. Now there's people that maybe don't have the income and, they're buying, lower cost cars, but they, their personality might reflect something that Ferrari puts out, because they have a real, a real personality that does kind of resonate with, sport and high performance. And, there's always those situations, but often the people that honestly end up buying what they buy is somehow tied a little bit to their personality. Yeah, I mean, we're not talking about winter beaters and things like that. You can't draw those conclusions. Sometimes people buy stuff like that out of necessity. So that's just kind of what it is. But when you finally settle in and you buy a car that you're proud to pull out on a Sunday afternoon, I think those are the cars that are a true reflection of your personality. And honestly, I think there's a lot of great cars, a lot of great choices. And if we all had the same personality, I think we'd all be driving the same car, wouldn't we? I mean, we'd all be ripping around in something that looked almost the same. So clearly we're all different people, but we all have different personalities, different things that motivate us. And that's great. And I think it's that whole level of diversity that makes this world very, very interesting. Even the most fire-breathing Ferraris or McLarens would be boring if everybody drove one, wouldn't you think? So I think it's cool that we all have different personalities and different kind of wants and needs. But I do believe that there is some of that, and your personality is truly reflected in the car that you drive, I think, in some regards. Jaguars, like the F-Types I talk about, I mean, clearly we love the F-Types on this channel because I believe there's a strong sporting intention there. You get some great sounds and performance and the big hips. I mean, we do, respect the idea of, having a car that has some maturity embedded, performance, looks, design. But we can also turn those valves off and enjoy the car and the comfort and the relaxation that you can get from that car. So it's a Jekyll and Hyde. And I think that speaks to a lot of F-Type owners, that they can appreciate that. But they don't always want a car that's that fire-breathing, that's that intense. And I think those types of cars do resonate with a lot of buyers. And I love them. Some people don't love the automatic transmission. I think it does a great job. There's a time when I wouldn't be caught dead driving an auto transmission. But I've seen the other side, and clearly modern day autos are amazing, and they're just as good as a DCTs or PDKs or any of that, but without the added cost and complexity, and they're honestly probably more reliable, and they do 95% of the same job. So they're just as spectacular. So anyway, everyone, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Maybe some of the cars that you drive, and does that, in your opinion, reflect your personality? I'd love to hear it, because I think this is a very, very compelling conversation about the choices that we make in our car buying experiences. And does it, in your opinion, really reflect who you are? Or is it, I just bought this because it was easy and cheap and dirty? Or does it really reflect who you are and your personality? So anyway, I'd love to hear it. Please drop a line in the comment section below. That'd be great. And let's get this conversation started. So I think it's great to have this conversation, this debate. And I do believe there's some relative or relevance in having this chat. So anyway, please drop a line. Love to hear from you. And as well, as always, if you love the car driving, the lifestyle, the experience, please do as well subscribe to the channel. If you're not already a subscriber, please do. And I think you'll find that it's a very, very interesting channel, because it really is about living the lifestyle. Life is too short to drive boring cars. Hope to see each and every one of you on the next one. We'll catch you real soon. Bye-bye.